My name is Martin Wolf. I am an assistant professor for monetary economics at the University of Saint-Gall. In my latest research, I study the implications of very high debt for our economies. The motivation is that debt levels are currently very high in many advanced countries, both the debt of governments, but also the debt of the private sector, such as households and firms.
Government debt in many countries has increased enormously in recent years. For example, in the US, it has doubled in the last 20 years, and Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act will only reinforce this trend over the coming years. In his research with Luca Fornaro, Martin argues that very high government debt can reduce countries' growth. Intuitively, to stabilise the debt-to-GDP ratio, costly measures such as profit taxes or lower public investment may be required, which lower firms' investment. One example of this dynamic is perhaps provided by Italy. The Italian debt-to-GDP ratio has climbed to very high levels already in the 1980s. To sustain the public debt, policymakers were forced to raise taxes and to slash public investments. Interestingly, during this period, productivity growth in Italy has slowed markedly. Indeed, some observers have pointed to the high degree of fiscal distortions in Italy as one cause of the productivity growth slowdown.
The issue with high debt causing low growth is that this sets in motion an amplification effect. As GDP grows more slowly, this pushes up the debt-to-GDP ratio even more. As Luca and I show in our research, once debt levels exceed a tipping point, this vicious cycle can become sufficiently strong so that the country becomes stuck in a high debt and low growth equilibrium from which it is very hard to escape.
Finally, also the debt of the private sector has increased in recent years. There is a risk that this leverage translates into another financial crisis, especially when interest rates rise. This may imply that central banks feel constrained in their ability to raise interest rates, a phenomenon called financial dominance.
As I show in research with Leopold Sessner, financial dominance can become an extremely persistent phenomenon through a self-fulfilling prophecy. The private sector may come to expect a weak monetary response to inflationary pressure due to financial dominance. When this happens, interest rate expectations fall, which pushes up asset values. Because borrowing in the economy is often tied to asset values, this keeps leverage in the economy high. Finally, as the central bank responds to high leverage with low interest rates, this validates the initial beliefs by the private sector. In summary, I warn about two risks of very high debt for our economies. Fiscal stagnation, that is a protracted period of high government debt and slow growth, and the idea that monetary policy can become less effective at controlling inflation due to self-fulfilling beliefs of financial dominance.